Hey folks, welcome back to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today we're taking a look at this little guy right here, Samurai Gardener from Osprey Games. It's made by Hisashi, and it is a interesting little tile laying or card laying game where you're trying to configure your garden in such a way and score a number of points based on how you can group your elements together. And there's 4 different elements that you have to work with. It's actually a really cool game. It's very fun, and I know I'm spoiling it a little bit for my final thoughts, but this is one that I really kind of took me by surprise. Wasn't expecting it going into Essen, and was able to demo it there, had a few plays of it there as well. Really a good time. So let's get down to the table. I'll show you how it works, and we'll come back with some final thoughts later on. So in a game of Samurai Gardener, you're trying to expand your garden and score rows that match these certain elements of or features of your garden, and how many you get paired together determines how many points you score. The first person to get to 25 points ends the game, then the round is finished, and then whoever has the most points is the winner after that. There are possibilities of scoring bonus points, but we'll get to that in just a few moments. Now, the way you expand your garden is by taking cards from the card deck here and adding them to your garden in such a way that it expands a row. For example, I extended my tatami feature right here, or I could place it down here like this to extend my pond figure right here like this. Let's get that forward a little bit more so you can see better. But you can only place it in a portrait format. You cannot place it in a landscape format like this. It has to be placed portrait. Additionally, you are able to overlap certain features. For example, you could do something like this, or something to that effect, wherever it might be a little bit better. For example, like this, where now I have 3 tatami right here, but then I have 2 garden features that I could extend at a later date. So that is possible. Now, the only difference here is that whenever you score a region, for example, if I score my 3 tatami here, then I'm going to go 1 point on the track, because 3 in a row scores 1 point. But then I have to flip over that tatami region, and I can't score that kind of feature again until I score all of these other ones. Additionally, another caveat is that on future rows, if you are trying to, like, for example, if I wanted to play this right here, which is good because I'd be able to score 4 garden, I can't do that because I can't cover up a feature that I have already scored. And you might say that might be hard to figure out, but it's not. It really isn't, because if you ever have a set of 3 or more, you've probably already scored it, so you know that you can't cover that up. So it's not that big of a deal. In order to get these cards, there's going to be, first of all, a first player. And that first player is going to turn over a number of cards that is equal to the number of players that are in the game. So let's just say that there are 4 players in this game, so he turns over 4 cards. Now, at this point, the first player is going to say, "Hey, hey!" And then everybody else at the same time is going to go, "Oh!" and try to slap one of the cards that they want. Now, if you're anything like me, you were just saddened greatly by what you just saw as far as the seizing mechanic for getting these different cards into your garden. Because you don't like it when games make you slap at things on the table, possibly hurting other people's hands or getting your hand scratched by somebody else's talons. Well, I've got some good news, because that's not the only way that you can seize cards in this game. So there is an optional seizing rule that is made for, in the rules, it's made for people who have trouble reaching the center of the table, like kids or something to that effect. But it's a rule that I frankly will always use instead of the slapping rule, and that is simply the first player turns over 4 cards, one for each player of the game, and then he chooses one, the next person chooses one, and so forth and so on. So let's say I'll choose this one as the first player, and then I'm going to play like this, overlapping, but it's okay because I haven't scored anything yet on this, and so I'm overlapping this in order to score the path, the 3 path here. So I would turn over that path and then take my scoring marker and move 1 point. Okay, so then after the first turn, the second first player turns over 4 new cards. And you can either do the slap method or the civil way of seizing cards and just simply choose. So the first person would choose his, and then it comes back to my turn, and I am left with this card to choose from. And, well, that's not entirely good because I don't have a whole lot I can do with this card. I could extend my path, but in doing so, I can't score it, so it doesn't get me any points, which is unfortunate. So I'm just going to extend my pawns here. I won't score any points, but that's okay. I'm looking forward to the next turn. On my next turn, I'm left with these 2 to choose from, and I think I'm just going to choose this one and extend my pawn feature. So I'll have to flip that one over, and I gain 1 point there. And so my next turn, I'm left with these options, and I'm really trying to work towards scoring these bonus points because that's one of the best ways you can win the game is scoring multiple rows at the same time. And so I'm looking, and I think I see an option here. I'm going to take this card, and I'm going to add it right here, which scores multiple rows because it's going to score this tatami right here. And I haven't scored that yet. And it's also going to score this garden right here as well. And I haven't scored garden either. So I am going to score both of them like this. I get 1 point for this one and 1 point for this one. So I go 1, 2. But then if I score 2 types of rows, I get a bonus 2 points like that. So I got 4 points in that round, more than the previous 3 rounds in just 1 round. So as you can see, the points can ramp up pretty fast as long as people are pretty savvy on where they're placing cards and so forth and so on. Remember though that you can't cover up rows that you've already scored. That's something that you have to keep in mind. But that's generally how you play the game. We go, like I said earlier, until somebody reaches 25 points. That round is finished, and then whoever has the most points at the end of that round is the winner. So that is Samurai Gardener from Hisashi Hiyashi and Osprey Games. A very neat game that can be played in really 2 different ways. How you do that seizing mechanism really changes how the game feels to you. If you do the slap route where everybody's, hurting each other and bruising each other and that type of thing, that has a little bit more of almost a party atmosphere to it. But if you choose the other route, the one that I usually prefer, where 4 cards are laid out and then you can choose one and then the next person chooses one and so forth, that has a little bit of a more cranial, maybe even a multiplayer solitaire feel to it. But again, I think the game is so light and so fast that it doesn't really bother me that it has that multiplayer solitaire look to it, because there is some interaction, because you can look at what other people are trying to score in their gardens, and you can try to pick the one that you're thinking they're wanting to take and make that work for your garden to make it a little bit more difficult for them. So there is a certain level of player interaction there. It's not completely a solitaire experience, but I did enjoy the different combos that you can try to go for. Having to score your face-up elements, and then you can't score that element again until you've scored the other 3. I really enjoyed that mechanism because it made it much more of a thinky type experience. You had to be a little bit more strategic with how you placed your cards. And I use that word strategically probably in a wrong way, because I don't necessarily mean that there's a strategy that you can go into. I guess tactics would be a better way to do it, because you are reacting to what gets flipped over and how you can use those cards that come into you. And furthermore, if you're not using the slap method, knowing that some people are going to get to choose before you, so you're kind of having to constantly change how you can work with the different cards. And it could be that you just don't get a card that you can work with, so you kind of have to plan ahead, or plan for the future, rather. And I like that aspect of the game. It's not all about this who can be the fastest to get out there, because frankly, some people aren't that fast on the draw like that. You have to take that into account. And when somebody is always getting that first pick, because they're fastest to get out there, that can be kind of demoralizing for the rest of the people in the game, because they're always having to work with maybe second best, or just something that is just not as good as what they could have gotten. So there is that. I enjoy the game. It is not, of course, one of my favorite games in existence, but it's a great experience, and the artwork is amazingly well done. I like the fact that it's minimalistic, but at the same time, it also carries over the different elements on the card. It also carries over that thing, and to watch your tableau build, your garden build, that's just a really cool thing. Another game that was very similar to that is Hanging Gardens. From way back when. I don't even remember who published it, but it had that same feel, and that was one of the same things that I liked about that game, was watching that garden kind of grow and figuring out how you're going to be the best, find the best score as you're placing new things into it. And this has a very similar thing going for it as well. So I really enjoyed the game. I did enjoy it very much. I'm going to give it 1.5 thumbs up. So this is going to be about a 6.5, maybe a 6, just a 6, because I do enjoy the game. It has great merit, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. But I always use that variant of not slapping the table. So that's it from me for Samurai Garden. Go check it out and give it a whirl as soon as you can. And I always, as I say, try before you buy, folks. We'll see you guys on the flip side.